I'm sorry, but something about that story just isn't right. Yeah, I couldn't help but feel like the ending was a bit too neat, a bit too pat. You know, these fellas working so hard, planning their escape, pulling off the great prison break only to get splattered on impact like some kind of cartoonish roadkill. Nah, that ain't sitting right with me. Let me see if I can dig up the original case file. Yep, here we go. The details on the 1973 breakout attempt at the York County Prison. Now this is gonna take a little bit of explaining. See, back in the early 70s, York County Prison was a whole different kettle of fish. It was overcrowded, understaffed, and pretty much considered to be a joke in terms of security. In fact, it was almost like a community effort to make sure nobody took this place too seriously. Now, if you're thinking, wait a minute, prisons are supposed to be jokes? What kind of messed up sense of humor is that? Well, let me tell ya, it's the kind that keeps guys like Tom and Bill awake at night. They need answers. But before I get to that, how's about a little background on these two fine gentlemen, our two stars of the show? Well, Tom, known on the inside as Big Tom, was in for a host of charges related to armed robbery. And if you've ever met anyone who looks like he could bench press a small car, well, you got a good idea of what Tom looked like. Not a big talker, but when he did speak, people listened. As for Bill, he was a bit of an enigma, a small, weary guy who mostly kept to himself. People knew he was serving time for burglary, but there were rumors that swirled around him like fog. Some said he was involved in something much bigger, something darker, but nobody ever pinned him down. That was part of the appeal for Bill. He was a man of few words, but his reputation preceded him. When push came to shove, nobody messed with him. As for their grand escape plan, it involved a lot of legwork, planning, and smuggling, which brings us to the most crucial piece of the puzzle, the blueprints of the tunnel. Yes, boys, we got ourselves a tunnel. Prisons and jails all over the country are famous for housing the most creative minds when it comes to tunnel digging. This one was no exception. Now, the blueprint is the key to this whole story. According to reports, these two crafty criminals got their hands on an actual map of the jail's underground tunnels. And let me tell you, these aren't the kinds of maps you find lying around. They were smuggled in piece by piece, likely over months, maybe years. Each fold in that brittle paper was a testament to a painstaking operation. Imagine the risks, the daring required to sneak such a thing into the prison undetected. The importance of this cannot be overstated. Without this map, their chances of escaping would have been close to zero. But let's rewind a bit. How did they get their hands on this map in the first place? Well, that, my friends, is where the true brilliance of these men comes into play. You see, like any self-respecting inmates, Tom and Bill had quite the extensive network going on. They were part of a larger group of prisoners known as the Down for Trial crew. These guys weren't murderers, rapists, or bank robbers. No, sir. They were the everyday Joes of the criminal world, petty thieves and hustlers who found themselves locked up because the legal system had nowhere else to put them Overcrowding, remember, was a huge problem back then, and this meant that places like York County Prison became melting pots for all sorts of characters. The administration was stretched to its limits, making it easier for resourceful inmates to form connections, build alliances, and carry out their schemes. Now, the members of the Down for Trial crew were, for the most part, just regular guys who stumbled into a life of crime. Maybe they were addicts trying to score a fix, or perhaps they just got caught up with the wrong crowd. Whatever the reason, they were stuck in a prison that didn't know what to do with them. But this presented a unique opportunity. Because of the lack of serious oversight, these men were able to form their own communities within the prison walls. They traded cigarettes for coffee, fashioned makeshift radios out of prison toothpaste, and smuggled in everything from lottery tickets to, yes, even makeshift weapons. But their greatest triumph was their information network. By banding together, they created a vast web of informants, people on the inside who knew the ins and outs of the prison better than anyone else. They knew where the blind spots were, who the weak links were, and most importantly, how to get things in and out of the prison undetected. And it was through this network that Tom and Bill obtained the crucial blueprint of the Prisonese underground tunnels. Now, I don't know who drew these blueprints, whether it was some sadistic guard who liked torturing inmates or a fellow inmate who just wanted to see another escape attempt fail. But the maps were accurate. See underneath. The York County Prison was a labyrinth of tunnels that were remnants of a bygone era. Back in the days when the prison was built, the area was rural. But as the city grew, the prison was surrounded, effectively cut off from the rest of the world. And because it was so isolated, it needed its own sewage system, water lines, and even a power generator. All of this had to be installed below the surface, creating a subterranean maze that ran beneath the prison walls. Over the years, these tunnels fell into disrepair, forgotten and neglected, until they became a secret hiding spot for the desperate and the ingenious. So when Tom and Bill decided to break out, they knew exactly where to go. All they had to do was get past the watchful eyes of the prison guards, which brings us back to the fateful night of August 12, 1973. The storm was brewing both outside and inside the prison walls. Rain lashed against the barred windows, mirroring the turmoil of the men trapped within. Just like in the story, Tom and Bill prepared for their daring escape. They chipped away at the wall, not with a hammer and chisel, mind you, but with something much more rudimentary. A sharpened metal comb. Yes, a humble prison comb became their weapon of choice. They carved out a hole just big enough for a man to squeeze through, an opening that was barely visible in the dimly lit cell. Then came the moment of truth. Tom squeezed through the hole, his hulking frame disappearing into the darkness. He was followed by Bill, who emerged into the storm-tossed night. For those few seconds, they tasted freedom, the rain on their skin, the wind in their hair. It was exhilarating, terrifying, and beautiful all at once. but their triumph was short-lived. They hadn't accounted for the traffic, the one thing that could foil their escape, a car that turned the corner, its headlights like a predator's eyes in the night. You see, unlike the story, there was no screeching of tires or bone-jarring thud. In the real world, that noise would have drawn attention, a lot of attention. Instead, the driver of the car, a young woman named Mary Jane, slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. She had hit Bill. Tom, seeing what had happened, turned and ran, sprinting as hard as he could back toward the prison. He pounded on the iron bars, screaming for them to let him back in, begging them to save Bill. But the guards just stood there watching, their faces impassive. They offered Tom a choice: stay out and face murder charges or go back and face whatever charges they had for him. Tom went back. The next day, Mary Jane told the police what had happened. She admitted that she had been drinking and driving and that she had seen Billy's body lying on the road. However, when asked about the other inmate, Tom, she said that she didn't see him anywhere. To this day, it's unclear whether she was protecting Tom or if she genuinely didn't see him. Either way, Tom served out his full sentence without ever seeing daylight again. Bill's body was taken back to the prison, and his death was ruled a suicide. Officially, the prison administration denied that Tom had ever escaped. It wasn't until years later that the truth came out, thanks in part to the faded blueprints of the prison's underground tunnels. Those maps ended up in the hands of a local journalist who published them along with the story of Tom and Billy's daring escape attempt. Now, why am I telling you all this? Why drag you through this confusing mess of a story when the ending is so obvious? Simple. Because the real story is in the details, the things that happened between those fateful moments when they broke free and when they collided with that car. It's in the struggles they endured, the risks they took, the hopes they held on to, and ultimately the harsh realities they faced that makes their story so compelling. Sometimes the greatest escapes happen not in the grand gestures, but in the quiet, desperate bids for freedom. And sometimes freedom, even when reached, is nothing but a mirage shimmering on the horizon. If you enjoyed this real-life account of Tom and Bill's daring escape attempt, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the archives. And if you have a story of your own that you'd like to share, drop us a comment. Who knows, it might just become the next chapter in our ongoing saga. Thanks for listening, everyone.